The Great Hall of Valaris Prime was the largest structure ever built in the galaxy. It floated in the darkness of space like a silver crown. Home to the Interstellar Council that ruled over 47 alien civilizations. For 10,000 years, no species had defied the Council. Those who tried were erased from history. Today, the hall was full. Representatives from every major species sat in their elevated pods arranged in a massive circle around the central platform. Some had scales that shimmered like oil on water. Others had too many eyes, or no eyes at all. A few existed only as clouds of light. They had all come to witness something historic. They had come to watch humanity kneel. Admiral Park Tai-ho stood on the central platform with his hands behind his back. He was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face that had seen too many wars. The scars on his neck told stories he never shared. Beside him stood Captain Yunari, his diplomatic attaché. She was 30 years younger, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her tablet contained every treaty, every law, every recorded speech the Council had ever made. She had spent 5 years preparing for this moment. Hi. Arbiter Kelmes of the Drakari Empire descended from his pod on a floating disc. He was tall and thin, with dark purple skin and 4 arms that ended in claws. The Drakari had conquered 300 worlds. They were the true power behind the Council, and everyone knew it. Kelmes smiled, showing rows of needle-sharp teeth. Admiral Park Tai-ho of Earth, he said. His voice echoed through the hall. You stand before the Interstellar Council as a representative of your species. Do you understand the honor we grant you today? Tai-ho did not bow. He did not even blink. I understand. The smile on Kelmes' face grew wider. Good. Then let us proceed. He raised one of his 4 arms, and a hologram appeared in the center of the hall. It showed Earth, a small blue marble floating in the darkness. Your species has existed for only 200,000 years. In that time, you have fought more wars than any civilization in recorded history. You have split the atom. You have reached beyond your own world. And now you expand into territory that does not belong to you? Murmurs rose from the gathered species. Tai-ho remained still. The Council has decided, Kelmes continued, that humanity is a threat to galactic stability. Your weapons are primitive but dangerous. Your aggression is uncontrolled. Therefore, we offer you a choice. He paused for effect. Surrender the Sol system to the Drakari Empire. Accept protective integration. Your people will be relocated to designated colonies where they can be properly managed. In return, we will allow your species to survive. Captain Nara's hand tightened on her tablet. She had predicted this. Every simulation, every analysis had pointed to this moment. The Drakari wanted Earth's resources and strategic position. The protective integration was just slavery with extra steps. You have 30 cycles to comply, Kelmes said. If you refuse, the Obsidian Fleet will reduce your homeworld to ash. Resistance is illogical. No species has ever defeated the Drakari in open war. He leaned closer, his eyes glowing with cruel pleasure. Do you have anything to say, Admiral? For a long moment, Tai-ho said nothing. The silence in the hall was absolute. Every alien species watched, waiting for humanity's surrender. It was inevitable. It was logical. It was the only possible outcome. Then Tai-ho smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a man who had buried friends on 6 different worlds. It was the smile of a species that had crawled out of caves and conquered its own planet through blood and fire. It was the smile of humanity. Hi, Arbiter Kelmes, Tai-ho said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. I want to make sure I understand correctly. You are threatening to invade Earth. You are demanding that we surrender our home, our freedom, and our future. You are telling us to become your slaves. Kelmes nodded slowly. I would not use such crude language, but essentially yes. I see. Tai-ho turned in a slow circle, looking at every alien representative in the hall. I want all of you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that we were given a choice, and we made it freely.
Ow.
He turned back to Kelmes. The United Terran government has authorized me to deliver our response. Captain Neri stepped forward. Her fingers moved across her tablet, and a new hologram appeared beside Earth. It showed a clenched fist surrounded by stars, the symbol of Terran defiance. "We do not surrender," Taiho said. "We do not submit. We do not kneel." His voice rose, filling the massive hall. "You want our world? Come and take it. You want war? You have it." From this moment forward, a state of war exists between the United Terran Government and the Drakari Empire. The hall exploded into chaos. Alien representatives screamed and shouted in 100 different languages. Some laughed at the absurdity. Others stared in disbelief. The Drakari had never been challenged. It was unthinkable. It was insane. Kelmes' smile had vanished. His forearms trembled with rage. "You fool," he hissed. "You have just sentenced your species to extinction." "Maybe," Taiho said, "but we will die free. And we will make you pay for every inch of ground and blood." He straightened his uniform and looked at Nari. "Captain, we are leaving." They walked toward the exit together. Every step echoed in the stunned silence. Just before they reached the door, Taiho stopped and turned one last time. "One more thing," he said. "You asked if I understand the honor of standing before this council. I do not see any honor here. I see 47 species that watched the Drakari enslave hundreds of worlds and did nothing. I see cowardice dressed in fancy words." He looked directly at the smaller species, the ones who had been conquered long ago. "But I also see something else. I see species that remember what freedom felt like. When we win this war, and we will win, we will offer you a choice. A real choice. Remember that." Then Admiral Park Taiho and Captain Yoon Nari walked out of the hall. Behind them, the galaxy would never be the same in the chaos that followed. No one noticed the small Sylvani representative recording everything on a hidden device. No one saw her send an encrypted message to her resistance. "Sell back home." The message contained only 5 words. The humans said no, across the galaxy. In hidden bases and secret meetings, oppressed species received the news. For the first time in centuries, they felt something they had forgotten. Hope the war for Earth had begun. And the galaxy was watching. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. On 1,000 worlds, beings of every shape and size watched the recording of Admiral Park Taiho's defiance. Most of them laughed. A primitive species from a backwater system had just declared war on the most powerful military force in the galaxy. It was suicide. It was madness. It was the best entertainment they had seen in years. The Drakari did not laugh. High Arbiter Kelmeus stood before the Imperial War Council on Drakkar Prime, his forearms clasped behind his back. The council chamber was carved from black stone, lit by floating orbs of cold blue light. 12 of the most powerful Drakari commanders sat in judgment. "The humans must be made an example," Kelmeus said. "Every species in the galaxy is watching. If we show any weakness, others may follow their foolish path." Fleet Master Vorak, the oldest commander present, leaned forward. His scales had turned white with age, but his mind was still sharp. "The Obsidian Fleet has never known defeat. 3,000 warships. 12 million soldiers. We have conquered entire civilizations in less time than it takes for their suns to rotate." "Then we will crush them quickly," another commander said. 1 month. 2 at most. Vorak shook his head slowly. "I have studied these humans. They are not like other species we have faced. They evolved on a death world. Their planet is covered in predators, diseases, and natural disasters. They did not become the dominant species through peace. They did so through war." "You sound almost impressed," Kelmeus said with disgust. "I am cautious," Vorak replied. "Impressed? No, but cautious." "Yes, we should not underestimate them." The council voted to deploy the full Obsidian Fleet. It would take 2 months to reach the Sol system. The humans would have time to prepare, but it did not matter. No preparation could save them from what was coming. On Earth, the mood was different. There was no panic, no chaos in the streets. Humanity had spent its entire history preparing for war. They simply had not known the enemy would come from the stars. General Kung. Minji stood in the command center of United Terran Defense, deep beneath the mountains of Korea. She was 55 years old. With streaks of white in her black hair and eyes that had seen the worst of humanity, she had commanded troops in the Unification Wars, the brutal conflicts that had finally brought Earth together under one government. Now she commanded the defense of the entire planet. "Show me our forces," she said. The holographic display lit up with information. Earth had 800 warships, most of them built in the last 20 years. They were smaller than Dracari vessels, with less advanced shields and weapons. But they were tough. Human ships were designed by people who expected to lose, who planned for every system to fail, who built in backups for their backups. "It is not enough," said Colonel Munyeho, her chief of staff. 800 against 3,000. "The numbers do not lie. Numbers never tell the whole story," Mingi replied. "The Dracari fight to conquer. We fight to survive. That is a different kind of math." She turned to the science station where Dr. Beek Sunwoo was working on 3 different screens at once. He was young for his position, only 38, but he was the smartest person Minji had ever met. His hair was messy, and he had not slept in 2 days, but his eyes were bright with excitement. "Doctor, what do you have for me?" Sunwoo pulled up a new display. It showed a massive asteroid surrounded by mechanical structures. "Project Hammer," he said. "We have been developing it for 5 years in case we ever faced an enemy we could not beat in a straight fight. The concept is simple. We accelerate asteroids to a significant fraction of light speed and aim them at enemy targets." "How much damage?" Minji asked. "Single hammer strike can destroy a small moon. Against a fleet?" Sunwoo smiled. "Let us just say they will not enjoy it." In another part of the command center, Lieutenant Commander Ohana led the intelligence division. She was quiet, careful, and very good at finding secrets. Her team had spent months intercepting Dracari communications, studying their tactics, learning their weaknesses. General Hannah said, approaching with a tablet, "I have found something important." Mingi took the tablet and read the report. Her eyes widened slightly. "They have never lost a ship?" "Never," Hannah confirmed. "In 10,000 years of conquest, the Dracari have never had a single warship destroyed in combat. Their enemies always surrender before it comes to that, and they have never faced a real war," Minji said quietly. "They do not know what it means to lose. They do not know what it means to fight anyway." She handed the tablet back and addressed the entire room. "Listen carefully. The Dracari think this will be easy. They think we will break and run. They are wrong. Humanity has faced extinction before. Ice ages, plagues. We did it to ourselves more than once. And we are still here. We will be here long after the Dracari are dust. Across the solar system, defenses were prepared. Mines were laid in the asteroid belt. Weapons platforms were hidden in the rings of Saturn. Every ship was loaded with weapons and crewed by volunteers who knew they might not come back. On Mars, Vice Admiral Shin Jun-ho reviewed his fleet. He was a large man with a booming voice and a reputation for never retreating. His officers loved him because he led from the front. His enemies feared him because he never gave up. "We will meet them at Jupiter," Gunho told his captains. "The gas giant's gravity will mess with their sensors and formations. It gives us an advantage." "Sir," one captain asked, "what if we cannot win?" Junho looked at him with calm eyes. "Then we make them pay so dearly that they never dare attack another world again. We become the warning that echoes through history. We become the reason other species find their courage." Meanwhile, in secret locations across the galaxy, oppressed species watched and waited. The Sylvani Collective, conquered 3,000 years ago, had maintained a hidden resistance movement. The Velmorians had never stopped dreaming of freedom. The Thyrans remembered their old battle songs. They could not act openly. The Dracari would crush them, but they could watch. They could hope. And if the humans somehow survived, they could be ready to rise. On the last night before the Obsidian fleet departed, Admiral Park Tae-ho stood on a balcony in Geneva, looking up at the stars. Captain Yoon Nari found him there. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "Yes," he admitted, "but not of dying. I am afraid that we might lose, and no one will remember we fought. I am afraid the galaxy will learn the wrong lesson. Sorry. Stood beside him. Then we must make sure they remember. Taiho nodded slowly. Whatever happens, the galaxy will never be the same. We have already changed it. Far away, the Obsidian fleet began its journey toward Earth. 3,000 warships moved in perfect formation. A wall of death crossing the stars. The galaxy held its breath. The Obsidian fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system on a cold morning in March. 3,000 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their black holes absorbing the light of the distant sun. For the Drakari, this was routine. Another primitive world to conquer. Another species to enslave. They had done it hundreds of times before. Fleetmaster Vorak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The ship was 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. Around him, his officers monitored their screens with board efficiency. Scan the system, Vorak ordered. Find their fleet. The scan returned unexpected results. The officer frowned at his screen. Fleetmaster, the human ships are not defending their homeworld. They are gathered near the gas giant. Jupiter, they call it. Vorak leaned forward. How many? Approximately 600 vessels. All of them smaller than our cruisers, the younger officer laughed. 600 against 3,000. They have already lost. Vorak did not laugh. He remembered his own words to the council. These humans were different, but even he did not expect them to survive. Set course for Jupiter. Formation Kresh 7. We will crush them quickly and move on to Earth. The Obsidian fleet moved deeper into the solar system. As they approached Jupiter, the massive planet filled their view screens. Swirling clouds of orange and brown, storms larger than Earth itself, gravity strong enough to bend light. It was beautiful and terrible. Vice Admiral Shin Jun-ho watched the enemy approach from the bridge of his flagship, the TDF Indomitable. His fleet was spread out among Jupiter's many moons. Using the planet's radiation and magnetic field to hide their exact positions, all ships. This is the Admiral Junho, said into the fleet-wide channel. Today we write history, not with words, but with fire. The enemy believes we will surrender. They believe we will break. Show them what humanity is made of. For Earth, for our children. For every species that has forgotten what freedom means. The response came back from 600 ships. 600 crews, singing their national anthems, their old war songs, their prayers. 600 crews ready to die. The Drakari entered weapons range and immediately broadcast their demands. Human fleet, this is the Obsidian fleet of the Drakari Empire. Surrender your vessels, and you will be treated with mercy. Resist, and you will be destroyed. Junho smiled grimly. Open a channel. Channel open, sir. Drakari fleet, this is Vice Admiral Shin Junho of the Terran Defense Force. We have received your offer of mercy. Here is our response. He nodded to his weapons officer. The TDF Indomitable fired first, launching a wave of nuclear-tipped missiles, followed by thousands of kinetic rounds. Across the fleet, every human ship opened fire at once. The Drakari were shocked. No species had ever attacked first. Their shields were designed for energy weapons, the standard armament of every civilized species in the galaxy. They were not designed for what came next. The kinetic rounds hit like hammers from the gods. Simple metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds punched through shields that had never failed before. The nuclear warheads followed, turning Drakari cruisers into expanding clouds of fire and debris. What is happening? Vorak shouted as his flagship shook from impact after impact. Our shields? They are using kinetic weapons, Fleetmaster. Physical projectiles. Our shields cannot stop them. In the first 60 seconds of the Battle of Jupiter's Reach, the Drakari lost 40 ships. It was more than they had lost in the last 1,000 years combined. Vorak's shock turned to rage. All ships concentrate fire. Destroy them. The Drakari responded with their own weapons, beams of concentrated plasma that could slice through mountains. Human ships began to die. The TDF Courage exploded as 3 beams hit it simultaneously. The TDF Morningstar was cut in half, both pieces spinning away into Jupiter's gravity, but the humans did not retreat. They pushed forward, closing the distance, getting inside the Drakari formations where their superior numbers meant less. It was chaos. It was madness. It was exactly what Junho had planned. "They are ramming us," a Drakari officer screamed. "They are using their ships as weapons." Petty Officer Jang Yuna sat in the cockpit of her destroyer, the TDF Defiant. The ship was dying. Fires burned in half the compartments. Life support was failing. Most of her crew was already dead. But her engines still worked, and she had one job left to do. "Command, this is Defiant," she said into her communicator. Her voice was calm, even peaceful. "I have no weapons left. Hull breach on multiple decks. I am taking her in." "It's Defiant. You are ordered to retreat," came the response. "Find a safe zone in negative command. One can see their flagship. I can reach it." Yuna looked at the massive Drakari vessel on her screen. The Eternal Dominion. Kill that, and the enemy fleet would lose its coordination. "Tell my parents I love them. Tell them I died free." She pushed her engines to maximum and aimed straight for the flagship's hangar bay. The largest opening in its hull, the most vulnerable point. Drakari point defense weapons tried to stop her. Small explosions ripped across her ship's hull. An alarm screamed that the reactor was going critical. Yuna ignored it all. She was singing an old Korean song her grandmother had taught her. About mountains and rivers and home, the TDF Defiant hit the hangar bay at 3,000 kilometers per hour and kept going, tearing through internal decks, rupturing fuel lines, destroying everything in its path. When the reactor finally exploded, it was deep inside the Eternal Dominion. Fleetmaster Vorak died instantly. His flagship broke into 3 pieces and began falling toward Jupiter, pulled down by the giant's endless hunge. The Drakari fleet fell into confusion. Without their commander, without their flagship, they began to retreat. Not a planned withdrawal, a panicked flight. Ships collided with each other. Captains gave contradictory orders. For the first time in their history, the Drakari ran from battle. When it was over, the Drakari had lost 400 ships. Humanity had lost 200. It was not a victory, both sides were bloodied and broken. But it was something more important. It was proof. Across the galaxy, species watched the recordings in stunned silence. The Drakari could bleed. The Drakari could lose. The Drakar could run. On Valaris Prime, High Arbiter Kelmus watched the battle footage with trembling hands. "What are these creatures?" he whispered. "What kind of species chooses death over surrender?" In a hidden base on the Sylvani homeworld, Resistance leader Tenmore played the footage for his followers. They watched Petty Officer Jang Yuna's final charge in complete silence. When it was over, Tenmore spoke. "That is what courage looks like. That is what we have forgotten. These humans fight not because they can win, but because they refuse to kneel." He looked at his people. "Can we do any less?" The first battle was over. The war had just begun, and somewhere in the darkness of space, Yuna's song still echoed. Mountains and rivers and home, always home. 6 months into the war, Earth was still standing. The Drakari had sent 3 more fleets. Each one had been bloodied, slowed, and forced to retreat. The humans lost ships with every battle, but they built new ones faster than anyone thought possible. Factories on Earth, Mars, and the asteroid belt worked day and night. Every citizen contributed. Every hand had a purpose. The war had changed both sides. The Drakari no longer laughed at humanity. They had learned to fear the small ships with their brutal weapons, the crews who fought to the last breath. The species that refused to understand the concept of surrender. On Earth, General Kong Mingi stood before a holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots showed Drakari positions. Blue dots showed human forces. And now, for the first time, there were green dots, allies. "The Velmorian resistance has agreed to help," reported Lieutenant Commander Ohana. "They have 50 hidden ships and thousands of fighters ready to move. The Theron Underground can provide intelligence on Drakari supply lines, and the Oran Liberation Front has been waiting for this moment for centuries. Minji nodded slowly. What about the Sylvani? Ambassador Park Taiho is meeting with them now. On the Sylvani homeworld, Taiho walked through a forest that had stood for 10,000 years. The trees were silver, their leaves made of something that chimed in the wind like tiny bells. It was beautiful. It was also dying. The Drakari had poisoned the water, cut down the oldest groves, tried to erase the Sylvani's connection to their world. Captain Yoon Nari walked beside him. Behind them came a dozen armed guards. Ahead, in a clearing lit by bioluminescent flowers, waited the Sylvani Resistance Council. 10 more, the resistance leader, stepped forward. He was tall and thin, with silver skin that matched his dying trees. Admiral Park Taiho, we watched your speech at Valeris Prime. We watched your people fight at Jupiter. We have been waiting 3,000 years for someone to say no to the Drakari. Taiho bowed slightly. We did not say no for ourselves alone. We said no for everyone, yet you ask us to risk everything. If we fail, the Drakari will finish what they started. They will burn our forests. They will erase our history. We will become nothing. Nari stepped forward. She pulled out her tablet and projected a hologram. It showed Earth, not as it was now, but as it had been centuries ago. Wars, pollution, destroyed cities. This is what we did to our own world. We nearly killed ourselves many times. And yet we rebuilt. We learned. We grew. The image changed, showing Earth as it was now. Blue oceans, green forests, clean air. We do not promise you an easy victory. We promise you a chance to write your own future. That is worth any risk. Moore was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to his council. They spoke in their own language, too fast and musical for the translators to catch. Finally, he turned back. The Sylvani will fight, not for humanity. For ourselves, for our children, for the forests they will never see unless we are free. Now, the alliance was sealed. Meanwhile, deep in Drakari territory, Commander Cha Yunbi led the most dangerous unit in the Terran military. They called themselves the Ghost Wolves. 60 soldiers trained in sabotage, assassination, and impossible missions. They wore black armor that absorbed sensor signals. They moved through enemy space like shadows. Yunbi crouched behind a cargo container on a Drakari supply station. The station fed fuel and weapons to 3 different fleets. If it was destroyed, those fleets would be stranded for weeks. Team 2, what is your status? She whispered into her communicator. Charges set on the fuel tanks, came the reply. Ready to blow? Team 3. Command center secured. We found something interesting, Commander. Deployment schedules for the entire sector. Yunbi smiled in the darkness. Download everything. Then we burn this place to the ground. The explosion was visible from 3 systems away. It was the 17th supply depot the Ghost Wolves had destroyed in a single month. The Drakari called them demons. Yunbi considered that a compliment. Back on Earth, Dr. Beek Sunwoo had not slept in 3 days. His eyes were red, his hands shook from too much coffee, but he was grinning like a child on his birthday. General Minji, it is ready. He led her to a secure laboratory deep underground. On the screens was something that looked like a weapon, but on a scale no one had ever attempted. Project Hammer Phase 2, Sunwoo said. We knew from the beginning that we could not win through direct combat alone. We needed something that would change the equation entirely. This is it. The display showed a hyperspace gate, one of the massive structures that allowed ships to travel between star systems. Without the gates, faster-than-light travel was still possible, but much slower. Fleets could be stranded. Empires could be cut off. We have discovered a way to collapse the gates, Sunwoo explained. A single device, properly placed, can destroy a gate and prevent any new gate from being built in that location for at least a century. Minji stared at the display. If we destroy the Valeris Gate, the Drakari homeworld would be cut off from their military. Their fleets would be stranded across the galaxy. Their supply lines would collapse. The war would effectively be over. Can you build it? Already done. We just need to get it to Valeris. Minji turned and addressed her command staff. This is our moment. Not just for humanity, but for every species that has suffered under the Drakari. We are going to end this war, and we are going to show the galaxy that tyrants can fall. Allied fleet began to gather. Human ships, newly built and crewed by volunteers who knew the odds. Velmorian raiders, small but fast and deadly. Thyran cruisers, their engines modified to run silent. Oran fighters, piloted by warriors who remembered their grandparents' freedom. And Sylvani vessels, graceful and silver. Carrying people who had waited 3,000 years for this chance, Admiral Park Taiho stood on the bridge of the TDF Unity, the new flagship of the combined fleet. Captain Yu Nari was beside him, as always. How many ships? He asked. 1,004, she replied. Humans, Velmorians, Thyrans, Oran, and Sylvani. The first combined fleet in galactic history. Taiho looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Drakari were preparing their final defense. They still had more ships, more weapons, more experience. But they did not have what he had. They did not have people fighting for their freedom. Send a message to the fleet, Taiho said. Tell them this. Today we do not fight as separate species. Today we fight as one galaxy. The Drakari have ruled through fear for 10,000 years. That era ends now. Not because we are stronger than them, but because we are no longer afraid. General Kong Minji watched the fleet depart from her command center on Earth for the first time in months. She allowed herself to hope. They thought we were primitive, she said quietly to herself. They forgot that primitive means we learned to fight before we learned to talk. The final battle was coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Valeris Gate was the largest structure in the known galaxy. It hung in space like a ring made of stars, 20 kilometers across, humming with energy that connected 1,000 systems. For 10,000 years, it had been the heart of the Drakari Empire. Control the gate, control the galaxy. Now, it would become their tomb. The Allied fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 1,004 ships from 5 different species united by a single purpose. Against them waited the Drakari Final Guard, 1,800 warships crewed by the most experienced soldiers in the Empire. This was the last line. If it fell, everything fell. High Arbiter Kelmis watched from his new flagship, the vengeance of Dr. Akar. He had not slept in days. The weight of his empire's survival pressed down on him like a mountain. They've actually come, he whispered. The fools. His tactical officer looked up from his screen. High Arbiter, our forces outnumber them. We have the defensive position. Victory is assured. Kelmis did not answer. He was watching the human ships, the way they moved, the way they positioned themselves. These creatures had already done the impossible. They had defeated Drakari fleets. They had built an alliance from species that should have been too broken to fight. They had crossed the entire galaxy to challenge him at the heart of his power. Nothing about this war had gone as expected. Why should the final battle be any different? Admiral Park Tiho stood on the bridge of the TDF Unity. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. Captain Yoon Nari was at the communications station, coordinating with the Allied commanders. Lieutenant Commander Ohana fed real-time intelligence from 100 different sources. And somewhere in the fleet, Commander Cha Yunbi's Ghost Wolves waited for their moment. All ships report status, Taiho ordered. The responses came back. Human fleet. Ready. Velmorian? Raiders. Ready. Thyran cruisers. Ready. Oran fighters. Ready. Sylvani vessels. Ready. 1,004 ships. 6 species. 1 chance. Send a message to the Drakar, Taiho said. Nari looked surprised. Sir, they should know why they are going to lose. The channel opened. Across the battlefield, every ship on both sides heard Taiho's voice. High Arbiter Kelmis. 10 months ago, you gave humanity an ultimatum: surrender or die. We chose a third option. We chose to fight. Taiho's voice was calm, almost gentle. You called us primitive. You were right. We are. We are so primitive that we still believe in freedom. We are so primitive that we will die for it. We are so primitive that we inspired others to remember what they had forgotten. He paused, looking at the Drakari fleet on his screen. Today you face not just humanity. You face everyone you have ever hurt, every species you enslaved, every world you burned, every child who grew up in chains. They are all here, and they are not afraid anymore. Kelmy's voice came back, thin and angry. Pretty words will not save you. No, Taiho agreed. But courage will. All ships attack. The battle began. The first wave was the Oran fighters, thousands of small craft that swarmed the Drakari front line. They were not powerful enough to destroy capital ships, but they were fast and hard to hit. They pulled the enemy's attention, created chaos in their formations. Then came the Velmorian raiders, striking from angles that should have been impossible. They hit supply ships, communication relays, anything that supported the main fleet. The Drakari tried to respond, but they were fighting too many enemies at once. Vice Admiral Shin Junhu led the main human fleet straight into the center of the Drakari formation. His flagship, the new TDF Indomitable, fired every weapon it had. Around him, human ships did the same, filling space with missiles and kinetic rounds and pure burning rage. Push through, Junho roared. Give the Ghost Wolves their opening. Commander Che Yunbi's team had boarded Kelmus's flagship 20 minutes before the battle started. They had hidden in a cargo shipment, waiting for the right moment. Now they moved through the ship like ghosts, killing anyone who stood in their way. EUN by found the engineering section first. Her team planted charges on the main reactor, the shield generators, and the weapon systems. Then they moved to the secondary objective. Command, this is Ghost Leader, she whispered into her communicator. Charges set, but we found something else. The command codes for the Velaris gate. If we upload our package here. On the TDF Unity, Dr. Beek Sunwoo heard the transmission and grabbed the microphone. Ghost Leader, this is Dr. Beek. Upload the gate destabilization program now. Repeat, upload now. UNB's fingers moved across the alien console. The Drakkar code was different from human systems, but she had trained for this. She had spent months studying captured technology. In 30 seconds, she had uploaded the program. Package delivered. Extraction in progress. The Velaris gate began to shake. The energy that flowed through it started to fluctuate wildly. On every ship in both fleets, alarms screamed warnings.
What is happening?
Kelmus demanded. What have they done? The gate collapsed. 20 kilometers of ancient technology folded in on itself and disappeared in a flash of light that could be seen from 100 systems away. When it was over, nothing remained. No gate. No connection to the Drakari homeworld. The Empire was cut off from its military forever. The effect on the Drakari fleet was immediate. Ships that had been fighting with perfect discipline began to panic. Captains broadcast desperate pleas for orders that would never come. Some tried to flee. Others kept fighting out of pure rage. But it was over. Everyone knew it was over. Kelmus broadcast his surrender 12 minutes later. Admiral Park Taiho accepted, but not as a conqueror. He accepted as an equal. The war was over. Now, the real work began. In the weeks that followed, the Interstellar Council was dissolved. The Drakari Empire agreed to release all conquered species and pay reparations for 10,000 years of tyranny. A new organization was formed, the Galactic Coalition, with Earth as a founding member alongside the Sylvani, the Velmorians, the Thyrans, and the Oran Captain Yunari was elected as the first human representative to the Coalition's High Council. She accepted the position with grace and immediately began working on a charter of rights that would protect every species. No matter how small, General Kung Minji retired to her home in Busan. She had saved humanity, saved the galaxy, and now she wanted to see the ocean again. A reporter found her there, sitting on her porch, watching the waves. "General, how did humanity win against impossible odds?" Minji smiled. "They made the same mistake every conqueror makes. They saw our kindness and thought it was weakness. They saw our cooperation and thought it was submission. They forgot that the species that invented kindness also invented war." Across the galaxy, monuments rose on liberated worlds. On Sylvani Prime, they planted a new forest in honor of the fallen. On Velmer, they built a tower that reached toward the stars. On Thyra, they sang songs that had been forbidden for 1,000 years. Every monument bore the same inscription, written in 100 different languages, "To Earth who taught us that freedom is never given. It is taken." Admiral Park Taiho visited Petty Officer Jang Yuna's memorial on Mars, her destroyer. The TDF Defiant had been recovered from Jupiter's orbit and placed in a museum. People came from across the galaxy to see it, to understand what courage looked like. Taiho placed his hand on the hull. "Thank you," he said softly. "You showed them what we are." The stars were quiet now. Not the silence of oppression, but the silence of peace. Real peace earned through sacrifice and blood and the refusal to kneel. Humanity had gone to the stars looking for wonder. They had found chains instead. So they broke the chains, not just for themselves, but for everyone, and the galaxy would remember forever.